another episode of Life in the Military Spouses Edition. This week, we're on week 4 of Advent, and we're talking over the topic of love. And I know most of us go to the romantic side of things, and how do we find love and romance in the military life? But that's not what we're talking about today. We're going to table that and talk next week, because we will be having some guy perspective from it. And we're bringing our husbands on next week with that topic in mind. But this week, it's talking over love and how love can look different. Love can look different at different stages, different points, especially when it comes to the military times of like when and where you're at, but also the topic of self-love. Because in Advent, we want to think of love in the way of, or at least I do. I don't know, Ash, you can tell me your perspective on this, because I always feel like in the season of Advent, I always think of the love that is given to me.
Okay.
And as a gift, right? Like I always feel like everything is a gift, especially when we're talking, the faith perspective of like, love is being given to me. I was so loved that he gave me his son to repent for me, like to take on those sins for me. And it's a gift of love. And so I always think of that of like, okay, where am I gifting myself love? Am I able to love me as much as my husband, my kids, and even Heavenly Father does to me? Like, that's just how I look at self-love. I know that's a topic and it's super cliche, but when you think of like love in the Advent season or love in general, where do you kind of go with that?
So like Stephanie said, we're going to table the other discussion. We're going to bring our guys on next week. It just worked out for our schedules to have it work out for the guys to come on and join us that way. And so trying to stay focused on not even mentioning that particular side of it. I still, my first thought still goes to honestly the English language and the word love, and how our English language really does us a disservice on the word love. There's, in other languages, especially Greek and Hebrew and all of those first languages, the word love is so rich, and there's different words for different kinds of love, and you get a better idea of like the feeling and the action of it. And so thinking about love and putting aside romantic love and my husband and marriage and all that kind of love, I think about this love that is again, we do such a disservice because we don't have anything to describe it.
Right.
But it's like, it's just this. Okay, so I guess I should say that I view it as an action.
Yes.
I view love as action. It's not a word. It's not spoken. Yes, we speak, I love you. But when we think of love and how you feel love and how you see love, like I see it in action. And so if it's for myself or for my children, I feel like the action is care. It's you take care of those two entities, yourself and your children. What about you?
And I would even expand that out to friendships, because when you're like, I don't know, Abby and I both do this with our friends, is that we'll tell some of our friends, especially the really close ones, like, okay, love you. And it's not like love you in a weird way. It's not love you in the romantic way, but it's truly like the love you as in we care so much about you. Like it is truly, like you're saying, it's the, if you want to put another word to love, it is caring for somebody at more than just an acquaintance level. Like I know plenty of acquaintances that I'm like, cool, I'll pass you in the street, I will help, but am I gonna like dote over you? No, I'm not going to do that. Like I don't know you that well. Whereas there are people in our lives that, you know, do I talk to them every day? No, but I still care about them immensely. Like would move mountains, would do anything for them, would care greatly for them. And so I feel like the word, like you've said, caring is that action. So if we were to take love and replace it for caring, I care for friends. I care for, you know, my parents and my relatives, you know, kind of a thing. I care for my kids. I care for myself. And so when we look at that, I feel like you're right, that like even in the Greek language or in other initial languages, they have different words for love. There are many versions of love. And I think that's one thing that we forget is that love is an action. It's not just a word. It is what are we doing in the form of caring for another. Because like I said, is that, you know, Heavenly Father cared so much for us. He gave his son. And so what do we give, or that action of caring for someone else? How do we show it? Because I did a test or an assessment when I did a business meeting like last month or something, and it was a self-care assessment. And I was like, okay, cool, right? Like, no big deal. And in the assessment, it even asked like, okay, well, how much do you care for yourself? And it's like, if I look at it and I go, how much do I care for my kids? Well, like a 10. Like, of course, you know, like we were just talking offline, is that we would, you know, you get this different kind of care when you love on your kids, right? But are you willing to take that same number and put it to you and make it a true statement? Are you willing to make it a true statement about your friends, right? Like, what is the number that you care for your friends at? What is the number that you care for your kids at? And are those two numbers the same as what you care about yourself?
Yeah.
And in this crazy, like, I just continue to go to the like side of, we're so prone to put everybody else before ourselves. Yes. Right? Like, especially in the holiday season, it's, do the kids have all that they want? Did I get this person? Did they get their teacher? Did I get this? You know, like caring all over for all these other people. And yet we have run ourselves ragged doing it. And so it's that idea that, is the number that you love others at the same that you can say you love yourself at?
Well, and it goes back, I mean, I'm sure several of our listeners have already heard this, but like, I'm just going to say it again. Like, if we are not taking care of ourselves, how can we take care of our kids?
Absolutely.
And we can't be the best mom that we can be if we're not filling our cup and and prioritizing ourselves to be able to pour into somebody else, whoever else that is. And so it's prioritizing our self-care and self-love, so that we can love better.
Yes.
Now, I understand, like, that sounds like a super selfish, super entitled mentality. I understand that, because I was there. I thought that. I never wanted to either admit, for one, that I needed help, or that I needed a break, or that I needed some self-care, self-love. I never wanted to admit it because I didn't want me to look weak.
Yeah.
I didn't want to accept it, even though I needed it, because then in my mind, I thought that man, if I do this, I'm a bad mom because I'm not taking care of my kids, or I'm not giving my attention to my kids, or I'm not um serving or doing something for somebody else, right?
Mhm.
And so I had both of those views of self-love and self-care, and I had to get over myself.
Yep.
Ultimately, I really did just have to humble myself, get over it, and be vulnerable with my own self
Yep.
so that I could take some time just to do whatever
Yeah.
so that I could be filled some way.
Well, and I think that, like you're saying, is that we would sit there, and I immediately, the memory of, we were in Germany, and I think Chris was on like field rotation or something. He was away. I don't think he hadn't started his deployment yet, because that's when my tailspin happened, was during that. And it was towards the beginning of field rotation. It was like a 3-week long field rotation. I was a little flustered, right? I'm running around, and I was like, I've got it. I don't need any help. I've got it. I can do this, right? And it was the first time that I was in a foreign country without help, without anything. And I was like, I don't need childcare. I'm a great mom. I can do this, and I can keep up with the toys that are now strewn across my house, and feeding her, and all of these things. Like, I thought I was like trying to be Wonder Woman. And I can't knock that version of me, but I had to learn how to love that version of me, right? Because we would look at our kids, and we would never expect our kids to have it all together, right? We wouldn't be like, okay, well, you should know this by now, or you should be this way. Like, we wouldn't look at our kids that same way and be like, you should have it together. I mean, yeah, there's times where I'm like, really? I feel like we should already have heard this for the 700th time. Why are we doing this again? But at the same time, we are understanding that they are not perfect, and that they're learning and they're growing. We are the same thing. Why are we not giving ourselves credit for that? Like, we are still learning. It was the first time that I was ever like truly alone, with zero like assistance. And I felt that there was this unmentioned, untold expectation that I would have a clean house and dinner on the table at 5, and I would look this prim and proper, beautiful woman. I was like, girl, I didn't even know if I put my hair up. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I was at a stage where I was like, I don't even know what day of the week it is.
Yeah.
And after I like had that aha moment of, you know what, maybe the toys won't be picked up, or maybe there will still be dishes in the dishwasher, or like in there. And I kind of started learning how to, you know what, if I can love her, I can love me.
Mm-hmm.
If I can find joy in the moment, and find love in the moment, and care for the moment, then who cares what else is going on? And I think that, but that changes, right? Like, I feel like our love, whether it's self-love or love for another, changes depending on the seasons of our lives, of their lives. You know, because like, I love my oldest differently at 14
Yeah.
than I love my 4-year-old.
Yeah.
So I think that's something different that we kind of look at.
I think so love doesn't change, but I think how we show our love, how the
Yeah.
action is with those seasons. Like you're saying, 14-year-old versus 4-year-old, totally different. And um and with ourselves. So I mean, I as you're talking, I'm thinking back and I'm going, okay, I I met Eric, I was not even 20 yet. And so here I am, late teens, and then going into my 20s. And so I'm this young adult. And then we have all of this life in between, and where I am now, where I'm mid 30s, and all of this different stuff that we've lived, and these different experiences, and how I loved myself back in my early 20s, late teens is way different than how I love myself now. And having realized, like, well, first of all, like I just said, I learned how to prioritize myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of learn myself. I didn't know who, I honestly still don't even know, might not even know who I am, but I know more of who I am than
Yeah.
when I was younger. And
Yeah.
because I'm growing and I'm changing, and interests and likes change and
Mm-hmm.
shift. And so being able to my mindset being able to shift and adapt to my growing self, um I think I've had to give myself grace and learn that that is okay, that what I liked before, I don't have to stay, I don't have to stay like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can move forward. I don't have to be that same person, and I don't have to expect people to think that I'm that same person either,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes that happens too. You run into somebody blast from the past and they go, "Oh, you were so this." And mm, yes, I was, but I'm not that person anymore. And I loved who I was then, and I love who I am now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. And we can grow and we can shift, and that's okay to leave things that you loved behind that don't bring you that love anymore. And so, anyways, um I would, as long explanation aside, I was sitting here thinking, okay, how do I what do I do now for myself? And just the other day, I brought back this little memory. Just the other day, like you're saying, there's laundry, there's dishes, there's all this stuff. And I had all those things plus some. And I was like, you know what? That will always be there. The laundry, I have 5 children. Of course, I'm going to have 3 loads of laundry every single day because they can't ever choose what they want to wear, or they get something dirty and they change their clothes 3 times a day. And so I'm always going to have laundry. And I stopped and I was like, I am going to watch a show. I want to sit down, put my feet up, and watch a show. And I allowed myself that time because that stuff, like I said, it wasn't going nowhere.
Right.
But if I continued pushing myself that day, I realized I just want to rest. I need the time to rest. And in that moment, I felt so good, and I was able to like get things done later on.
Mm-hmm.
I felt refreshed. It just took time to watch a dang show, something mindless. I don't even know.
Yep.
I don't even remember. And Willis sat there with me, or she put something else on. I don't remember. She was there obviously, but as of right now, I don't know exactly what she was doing, which sounds really bad, but that's okay. She's alive.
But I think that's the difference, is that like I wrote a note as you're speaking, is love looks different, right? Like one day it could be the fact of I need rest,
Mm.
right? And I just did it yesterday. We were not doing anything during the afternoon. I pulled out a book, I put a blanket on, a book, and I sat there. Yes, like you, I have 7 people in my house. I could be doing a million things of laundry. I could be doing dishes. I could be making dinner. I could be doing a million and one things. A million and one things. But I sat in front of on my couch in front of my Christmas tree and read a book instead, because
Mhm.
that's what I needed. In that moment, that was love to me. Chris came down at one point in time. I mean, I was watching him paint, and then he came up and he sat down with me. And his version of love for him was to paint in that moment. My kids, it was to go hibernate in their room or to play a game. And but that's what looks different. And it was interesting because then as you're talking, like I kept thinking of this idea when at one point in time during the deployment, I was told, oh, you're not supposed to tell them like real life what's going on at home. And I tried for so long to keep it quiet of like, man, I'm stressed. I'm dealing with a toddler. I'm pregnant. I'm in a foreign country. This is frustrating, kind of a thing. And just to kind of like vent because like I didn't have that person. I didn't feel like I could trust anybody on base because there was a moment where a lot of gabbing was happening. And so I had to keep quiet to myself, and I did, but I didn't feel like I had anybody that could resonate with me. And so I kept it quiet for a very, very long time. And I could see myself like not loving the situation, my children, the house, me, the situation of being where we were. I wasn't loving any of it. I wasn't appreciating any of it. I just was so like over it. And I finally one day just told Chris, and I was like, it is not butterflies and rainbows. I would just like you to know. Like,
Yeah.
like he's just somebody that I knew I could vent to and be like, you know what? Here it is. It's not wonderful. Thanks so much. I just needed to tell you that. Like, and I have a friend now who is amazing. I mean, she's been through military life with us, and she's been through veteran life with us, and she's done all the things from parenting to life. And so I have those people where I could turn around and be like, it's not butterflies and rainbows. And other times I can be like, it is amazing. And it's not like we're in a competition with each other. It's not like we're debating each other of who's got it worse or who's got it better or any of that. It's out of genuine love and support. But what do we need in that moment is going to look different. And what my kids need is different. Abby needed the young mom in the military life. She needed the young mom who was growing and learning. Now she kind of doesn't need me as much. She needs me in a different sense. Whereas the boys, I don't know, the boys are my little shadows. So I don't know, so it's just different. Cause then like even our friendships, what we need out of our friendships is different.
Yeah. Yes.
Depending on the friendship, depending on the time of year, the time of life, anything, I've got certain people that I'm like, hey, I really need a prayer, or my prayers were answered, that are scripturally in tune with me. And I've got other people who are business in tune with me, and I can bounce ideas and we can talk business. And I've got other people who are literally like mom life. And I've got others that are like all encompassing, who I can talk any conversation with. But it's understanding what kind of love do I need right now? What kind of love do they need right now? Is Abby just coming to me to vent, or does she need me to fix something? She had a gymnastics meet over the weekend, and she was upset beyond belief, like just sobbing because she felt she did so horribly. And I was trying to fix it, right? Trying to be the Miss Fix It. And I'm going to stop the tears from crying, and I'm going to stop it all, and I'm going to help her, and we're going to do good, and I'm going to be the best mom ever, right? Like, and she looked at me and she's like, you're not helping. And I went, I failed because I wasn't listening to what she needed. And she needed just to be mad in that moment, like just to be mad. And I didn't want her to be mad because she did good.
Yeah.
But in the moment, she just needed the open arms and the love. That was what she needed. And so I think that's the other thing, is learning like, okay, what does love look like for every person in our life, or at least the close people within our lives, not every person, but the close ones, and what do they need and how do they speak it is completely different.
I love that you said that you didn't listen, because that is such a massive action to show love. Is we need to be listening to the needs of our family and our friends. And without that, we cannot show love properly. So listening is such a huge thing, being quiet and just listening, right? We as you're talking, I'm like thinking like, yeah, Eric does it, I do it. We all want to do, and yet we're working too hard. We're working so hard. We're overworking. We're because we're going on our own understanding on what we think will help, instead of just stopping for a moment, listening to really see what could actually help. I love that you said that.
And it's interesting because not always, like, throughout it, Abby wasn't saying like, I need somebody just to listen. She was speaking, but are we interpreting? Are we taking it in? Are we willing to stop long enough to understand what's being said in between the lines? Like me saying, man, my back hurts. Is that me insinuating I want somebody to come give me a massage, or is that just somebody like, I need to stop lifting today?
Always a massage.
Like, it's one of those kinds of things. Are we willing to stop and actually go, okay, why does your back hurt?
Yes. Yeah.
What is going on? And learning, because that, like you said, yes, listening is huge. It is a huge way of showing somebody else love. And I've come to, in a lot of the relationships I have, is, I will ask, like, first off, are you open to conversation, before I like unload on somebody and they're not mentally prepared or in the space for it. But also the concept of like, what do you need? Is this just to vent and get it off your chest? Cool, got it. Or is this going to be something you need actual assistance in? If you're in that space and you can, sure, wonderful. But like the other day, and I'm talking with Abby and she's crying. I mean, she's crying at the meet. She's crying in the car. She's crying at dinner. And all I'm just like sitting here and I'm like, she's downward spiraling. Like in my head, that is where I'm like, my kid is downward spiraling. Stop the spiral. Like, and I wasn't listening to what she needed. I wasn't listening and showing her the love. Like Chris was trying to come give her a hug and was like, I love you, kid. I'm so proud of you. And she was like, I don't, like, please don't. And I was like, okay. But she would talk to me. So it was like one of those things where it was like, eventually she was willing to listen to Chris, but she looks at Chris as more of the critical eye, whereas I'm the comforter. He is the critical eye. So she had to get past it enough that she could come to him and take the hug and understand and know that he's not being critical. He's not trying to like baby you. He truly is being honest with you. He's not like sugarcoating it. Yeah. And so like he listened. It took him a lot shorter period of time to listen than it did me. But that is something that is so key when it comes to love, is, are we willing to listen, or are we just doing?
And Olivia and I had a similar situation beginning of the fall. We had I coach soccer. I coached Olive, I coached Nora, and we had a friendly game set up with this other club league. And we normally, for our club that we were in, we're in a transition right now, but what we were doing before is we play 9v9. I had enough on a good day, only 2 subs. It's not a lot of subs. And this other team that we were playing, they didn't realize that we played 9v9. So they played a full field, 11v11. And so they obviously adjusted. We played 9v9 because we obviously didn't have enough players. However, we played on a field we didn't know. It was also turf field. It was a faster field. Our girls were tired. It was large and we didn't have enough subs. Whereas now the other team's playing down. They already have enough subs for 11v11. So now they have way more than enough subs for 9v9. And we were doing amazing. We were winning actually until maybe the last 15 minutes of the game when they came back. And so Olivia, on the way home, she's really upset as well. And I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to give her comfort, like you guys were doing with Abby. I asked her, what do you need me to do? And I think she was in a state where she just didn't know either. So she's, I don't know. Mm-hmm. She kept venting and kept repeating this. And so I eventually was like, I got to try something new. And I gave her tough love. And I was like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of it. You've already said this. I've already told you guys have done a great job. Like, and I just was like, rah. And I was like, stop already. Stop. You are causing yourself more stress by like dwelling on this
Right.
than just thinking. You need to calm yourself down. You need to take a breath. You need to think. And it kind of shook her back into perspective. She was quiet for almost the remainder of the way home. And then when we got home, she goes, "You're right." She was, "Yeah." After a while, she was like, "We really did do good." I go, "Yes, you did." And so, on top of that, I'm thinking about friendships and my children, especially like tough love. We show a lot of tough love in our household. That is how we receive it a little more. When we comfort each other and we're all lovey-dovey, it's like, sometimes. And
Yep.
and it's just like, I don't know, it's almost like gives an opening for manipulation, which I don't like. And so it's just like, dude, like, I love you, but you need to suck it up. And
But that's different. And I think that's part of understanding the relationships that we have. Like that is a way of showing love, is understanding, okay, if you take tough love and I'm all like cuddles and butterflies, like if you're sitting, and this goes for any relationship, but I've learned it mostly, and I know this is a diversion, but in a marriaging perspective, which I've now taken from marriage after learning about it in marriage and brought it into especially the relationship with like my kids, is actually sitting there and going, okay, how do you receive love? Because we could be saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, flashing signs and everything. And then you're looking at it going, God, that's obnoxious. And it's not even like something, you're not receiving it at all, or not able to recognize it, because to you, love is a gift. Love is quality time. And here's me trying to like be all lovey-dovey on you and hug you, and your kid's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you so close to me right now? Right. Mm-hmm. And they're totally put off by that moment. And you're like, but I'm loving you. And they're like, but you're not. Like, and sometimes, like, I know there's plenty of times where there's the occasional moment where I just want the hug. And then I can be the big girl, put my big girl pants on and deal with it. Some days I just need the hug. Mm-hmm. But other times I'm like, just lay it on straight. Like, let's just tough love this, call it a day. Yep, I messed up. You're right. Move on. Right. And that's me. But that's also what works for my kids. If I sit here and I tell Abby, I'm like, hey, tough love, suck it up, buttercup. She's like, cool, got it. I'll suck it up. Right. But that's how she's understanding, interpreting. But are we willing to ask the question of, how do you get this? How do you love? How do you
and also to expand on that a little more too, is it's being willing, on top of being willing to ask the questions, it's being willing to actually adapt and give love that way. And we only have, like, a lot of times we're so narrow-minded, where at least I was, and I still am, and I have to kind of pull myself back. And and again, I don't want to talk about my husband, but I've also learned this with my children, that like, how they receive love, I need to be willing to show them love how they receive it. And if I'm not willing to actually act on that and just be like, well, this is how I'm showing you love, you better receive it or you don't, that's wrong on my part.
Yes.
That's so wrong. And, maybe not everybody, but there's a book called The 5 Love Languages. And I have it sitting right here. There it is, right behind you in the middle of the stack by the blue books.
I know it's somewhere. I'm like, it's right. Yeah.
Yep, right there. So that's the one for adults and for marriages, but they made one for children.
And did you know online they have it too?
Yes.
You can take the test online. You don't even need the books, but you can go online and you can take the test as a kid, as an adult, as an individual. You can do all of it.
So I love that because it makes it easier. You don't have to go and buy this thing. But if you want to read this, because it goes through giving examples of the
Mm-hmm.
author's perspective of what each section looks like.
Yep.
Um, if you haven't heard about this book, it breaks it down into 5 different love languages. There's affirmate words of affirmation, physical touch,
Gifts,
gifts, uh,
um, quality time.
and acts of service.
There you go.
And so each chapter is like one of those love languages, and
Mm-hmm.
then in the back it has a test
Yep.
where you can ask your kids certain questions and figure out probably how they most receive love. It's not limited to that one
No,
thing,
no. Right.
but it's kind of the most of how they receive love. So anyways, that has helped a lot also because it kind of breaks it down into a child's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of a marriage perspective. And
But I think it was interesting. I don't know. Have you done it with all the kids yet? Because we
I
did it with ours, and
yeah,
I was amazed by the answers. Because like I thought so many of them were gonna be like quality time. Like I want to spend quality time with you. And really, it was gifts. Like for these kids, it was like if you and I know that sounds so childish, like or it could sound childish. Like of course they're gonna think that like a gift is fun, but like truly, I watched it happen on after Abby's meet this weekend when we were like, okay, I was like trying to verbally like show her the love, right? Like tell you I'm proud of you, tell you I love you, you've got this, like all the words of affirmation that would have woken me up, and they were doing nothing, falling flat. I mean, she would accept it, but she was like, it wasn't changing the mood. So then Chris is like, well, I'll feed her, right? Like, we'll go take her to her favorite food, and that should make her better. She was so upset. She really didn't want to eat. Like she ate, and there was the little glimmer of like some happiness, like
yeah,
slightly. So we were getting closer. And I finally looked at her and I was like, the mall's right there. And she was like, what? And I was
yeah,
like, mall's right there. You want to like I'll lift your ban on your because Chris thinks she has too much Bath and Body Works. And I was like, I'll lift it if it'll put it. She was like, really? Like, I mean, ear to ear smiles, like for the first time all day. This kid was so thrilled because it was just what she needed. Like that was the I love you, I'm proud of you. And she went in, we got a couple of sprays and walked out. Like it was literally a 20-minute ordeal at the mall, and it was nothing big, but it
yeah,
was enough for her to feel like, okay, well, mom and dad love me, right? Like they do support me, they love me. She walked out so much happier. She couldn't stop talking all night. Like she woke up the next morning thrilled beyond, like the mood shifted so quickly because we were willing to speak her language. My
yeah,
boys, if you feed them with treats, they will be happier than can be. That
yeah.
is like, hand my boys brownies and you've made their day. Like, it doesn't matter the mood.
And
But it,
I love it because it's not like, at least in the book, like it explains, okay, gift giving, physical touch, like you think physical touch is like all like groping and lovey and like, oh, petting each
yeah, yeah.
other. And it's not. It's there. I encourage you guys read the book, but if you guys are, if this is something maybe that you're struggling with or it's
Mm-hmm.
speaking to you, because you're going to gain a different perspective on maybe what these things look like. And it's some gift giving is not always traditional gifts. It's different ways of giving gifts, you know, to your children, or to, if you want to read this, the marriage one, go for it. But Abby received it with in that moment there, but it's also like little things when you're just thinking about them and you
Yep.
give, you know, so it's really a great thing. And you're able to learn a lot, but it goes back to being willing to give the way that other people receive, and and stepping away from yourself. Now this is total contradiction of how we started this conversation, because we're talking about self-love, and taking that
But
time.
it plays a part because that 5 languages, you can take an independent. Learn how you receive love.
Yeah.
Because you could be sitting here being like, nobody loves me, and yet you have no idea how you receive it. Like, I thought I was for all of eternity of words of affirmation. Now I've learned I'm an acts of service person. Like, if you do something for me, I will thank you very much. You love me. Like, you love me. My husband vacuums and he's like, yeah, she knows it. Like, that he knows. He just
Yeah.
knows. Even if it's just once a week, he does like dinner or the dishes or something. Bath time for all I care. Like, it's just that moment. And he's like, she knows I like my tank goes through the roof. And my kids know the same thing. Help me with chores. Do something. You know, you don't even have to talk to me when you do it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care if we talk or not. Just acts of service mean so much to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice because even yes, we want you to think of how is somebody else receiving it, because you don't want to waste your time. We don't want anybody wasting time when it comes to love. Life is far too short to be wasting time. So we also want to make sure that everybody is understanding. Like, my husband is a physical touch person. So is Magnolia. Those two, they need to be as close as humanly possible to another entity to feel love. And if you aren't like glued to them, you don't love them. Like, that is just how it is. So even though it is like my last on my totem pole, sometimes I have to be like, okay, you need this right now, as much as I don't necessarily want to be this close.
Right.
Come here, right? Let me love you. I'll get over myself in a minute, right? But are we doing the same? Like you said, are we doing the same for ourselves? But understanding what makes us tick so that we can understand, like, okay, loving Chris in that way of physical touch, or even Maggie in that way. Sometimes I can only do that for like 5 minutes. And then I'm like, okay, I need y'all like off
Yes.
of me.
Yes.
Like, love you, but I need you off. And it's understanding, okay, I know that that's how you understand it and you take it, but it's killing my love tank. Like, and understanding that, like truly understanding that, okay, it could deplete your love tank, but it will be replenished somewhere else.
Right.
Give and take.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a cycle. It's definitely a cycle. and that's when we're giving, and it's not being refilled somehow. That's when things get frustrating. Anger happens, arguments happen. I know
But
that.
then the other part of like the love thought process and knowing it is not only listening, but are you willing to vocalize? Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes you can't beat around the bush and be like, okay, well, a massage would be great, when really you want the physical touch. So you're like, okay, I need the massage tonight. Thank you so much. Like, there are times where we have to be blunt. We have to be outwardly, what do you need right now?
I feel that you and Chris do that so well. Like, you guys, I mean, yeah. Eric and I communicate really well. We've had to learn to communicate, but it's not like like, we get to that point first a lot of times, not all the time. But we get to the point where we're already kind of frustrated. We're already irked with each other. And then we start communicating. I wish we would take the time to communicate those feelings prior to getting irked and frustrated. I feel like you and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but everything that you mentioned, I feel that you guys do that really well, even beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, and that's not just in our marriage, but that's in the house. Mm-hmm. Like, we will vocalize. Like, even before I knew that shopping would make Abby better, but I had to ask the questions of like, okay, are you mad because of your progress? Are you mad because of somebody else's progress? Or are you just plain mad and you have no ideas? Right? It was actually trying to get to the root cause of it all. And she's like, all of it. And I was like, okay, understandably, like I get that. I can see all perspectives of why each situation makes you upset. Now what? And so as yes, but in our marriage, that's why I think our marriage has helped us in other relationships, because we've had to learn the hard lessons with one-on-one, where we know the other person, like I know he's not going anywhere. So if I misstep with a word or I do something, it's a learning experience there. Then I can turn around and I can take it and be the better mom with my kids. I can be a better friend because I can vocalize and communicate and listen, like, because that's all forms of communication, is actually actively listening too, um is part of it. And so yes, I mean, I give that man a lot of credit, but because he's dealt with, we both had to learn a lot, but in the same respect, it has helped me tenfold as a mom.
Yeah.
To be better as a mom, to be better as a friend. Now, it's interesting because as much as I have taken it and then taken those lessons and used it as a mom specifically, and then used it as a friend also, Chris has been slower to that. He will take the lessons with me, and he's incredibly patient with me. He will communicate to the high heavens with me. And then the kids walk in and it's a totally different, it's like we went backwards. And I'm like, where did this, you don't do that to me. I was like, and he's like, yeah, because that would cause a problem. I'm like, you don't think it's causing a problem there? You don't think it's putting up blocks and walls and problems right there? And he's like, oh. I was like, yeah, welcome. Like, just because it works in one relationship means it probably can work in others. Like, are we willing to take the lesson and actually learn it and take it beyond just a one-on-one? Because I'm still learning my kids, but I still can take those lessons and have the conversations with them, even without it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes, and everybody has heard this saying. It's actually a Bible verse, if you guys didn't know. But Philippians 4:13, love is patient. Is that the right reference? I hope I referenced that right. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, love does not boast, it is not easily angered. All of those things. Like, that is a popular verse that you hear, especially at weddings, that even non-Christians use, that everybody uses. And when you actually think about those things and you think about those words, on what love is, it puts a whole new perspective on your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And with my kids, and maybe you guys have heard this too, maybe you haven't, but a long time ago, several of my pastors had, like, take out the word love in there, insert your name. Ashley is patient, Ashley is kind, Ashley does not envy, does not boast, is not easily angered. And I go, oh, dang, that hits hard, because, like, that means if I'm really being honest with myself, I am not being loving. I am not,
Right.
like, showing love at all. And so that really puts a big perspective on how I love my kids and how I love my friends. Am I really being patient with them?
Mm-hmm.
Am I not being easily angered by yet another spill that they just cleaned up, and I told them not to eat on there, and I told them not to bring the food down there, whatever it is.
Right.
And
Right.
and so that really does help me. And being with the military, am I being loving? Because to my husband, I know this is going to my husband, but when he can't come home and I want him to, am I being not easily angered because all of the other stuff he has to do because the military is telling him he has to. And
Right.
and so that really does help my perspective and keeps me grounded and keeps me focused
Yes.
on, do I do it all the time? No, I have to get jarred back into focus all the time.
No, but
But
I think it's a really good thought is that, but like I said, is that just because it happened and it works in my marriage doesn't mean it can't work anywhere else. And so taking that concept of, are you not easily angered, especially when it comes to your kids? And even if it comes like, okay, thinking about the military life. And I mean, I've just accepted at this point in my life between the military and now my husband working construction, he picked the two different industries that have the highest divorce rates. I never see my husband. I've just accepted it. Like I just accept that my husband has zero consistency and I've accepted that for the rest of my life. But when I talk about looking especially at my kids and the relationship I have with them, am I patient with them? Not always. But do I own up to not being patient? Do I show them that I'm not perfect either and we do this together, or am I going to make them feel like they are smaller than me? And I think that's one of the things that has helped me through a lot of this is because my kids know that, like, yes, dad's here. I still have a husband. He's here. But 90% of the time you're getting mom. Like, that's just how it is. This is how this life rolls. And I think Abby and Jackson learned that a lot earlier due to the military, right? Like they learned that, yes, you get dad, but you're going to get mom 90% of the time. And that's going to be way worse than dad. Like, it's just going to be way worse. So, because you've got to see her more, you have to deal with her more. And it was this idea that I'm going to be your mom and I will always be your mom, but I'm not going to be a know-it-all. I'm not perfect. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. And I have understood that and I've showed them that so that they understand that it's okay to not be perfect. So that when I can say that I'm easier to anger because guess what? We're all learning. We're all on that page. Whether I'm a parent and I'm dealing with a 14-year-old, yeah, the situations that come up when they're 4 might be repeats and I should know this by now. So I'm a little bit calmer to the 4-year-old than I am the 14-year-old, but there's still things that I can still learn. We're still learning. And showing them that apology. I want them to apologize when they've done something wrong or they're not as kind to a sibling or they're not showing love. Like, what do we need to do? We need to apologize. You got to fix it, right? You can't just willy-nilly hurt somebody's feelings because that's what not showing love to another person is doing. It's hurting them. And so letting them see that it's okay to apologize. It's okay to admit that you're wrong. And we all understand that, like, we're not perfect, especially when it comes to loving another, especially when like in my house, there's 7 of us in a very small house. Like, I don't want to say very small, but in a smaller house with 7 people, we can all feel a little bit close to each other. Like, I get that. And so sometimes, attitudes rise and tensions rise and we get angry and it's quick to not love, not be patient, not to be kind. But are we willing to admit, okay, I have a fault. I didn't love you the way that I should have.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's move on and let me learn from it. And I think that's the other part of loving is understanding when we haven't been our best and admitting and going, okay, my bad, kind of a thing.
That is such a mature thing to say. And I mean, I've been there, I've done it. It doesn't feel good, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
It's necessary for the healing of that hurt and the healing of that relationship. And it makes me excited for our next conversation.
I know.
In our marriages, because that comes up so often, about having to admit fault. So,
Yeah. I'm excited. I think that this is a great point to say about loving ourselves. We've kind of talked over that, and I cannot wait until next week to bring our guys together and be able to sit down and talk like love and marriage and military life all together, because it's a hot topic. It's a big thing. We've talked about it. Divorce rates in the military are, I mean, 70% of marriages break up. So to be able to sit down and chat with each other is going to be super fun. I'm going to put the disclaimer out now in the warning to all. I cannot guarantee where this conversation will go, especially with both husbands. I cannot guarantee anything. So you might want to filter next week, because we cannot guarantee that it's going to be child friendly. So, but it'll be good.
So I would just say right now that it will not. Just the way our husbands are, and at least I can speak for my own. My husband does not have a filter. And he is, exactly where he stands, and he will say what he means and means what he says. And both of us honestly are very transparent in our marriage. We have learned that there's no point to hide anything, because when we try to hide things, it didn't help us in our other relationships and with each other. So I am excited for this conversation. Sorry, my little girl is, go find something. Sure, go for it. So yeah, I know whenever Chris and Eric are together, they feed off of each other. So it's going to be good. But we might have to split it up into 2 parts, actually. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see how that one goes, because I have a feeling those two, I know Chris, this is one episode, like, he's been thinking about it for weeks now. He's like, what do we talk about? Oh, the things we can talk about. I'm like, oh dear, he has planned so much. He is so excited to come on and share information with you guys, whether it's just talking with you and Eric. I know that that's one thing he loves doing, but also, as much as he doesn't like to admit it, I swear the man needs to be a marriage counselor. He loves talking marriage and support and how to get through it, and be against the odds. Be the one that is 9-day and absolutely in love with your spouse. Because that's one of his life. So
same. Eric and I, we're pretty passionate about that too. And so hopefully it'll be a productive conversation.
We're going to try and keep it from the bedroom for a little while, and then I can't hold off. Like, I mean, there's going to be a point where I can't veer them away. Like, it's just going to be one of those.
So it'll be good. But getting back to this conversation, we hope that this was productive for you guys. I know for Stephanie and I, we've mentioned before, these conversations, even just between us, are pretty therapeutic as well. And so we just hope that our own therapy is therapy for y'all.
Yes. And like Ashley said, The 5 Love Languages is a great book. You can get it for couples, individuals, parents, that includes the kids, kind of a thing. You can get them online, Amazon, all over. But if you look up the 5 Love Languages, you can take the test online. And so I know my kids, I had them just like pull it up on their own and take the test. And I was just like, hey, take this test and see what you score. I want to see what it is. And they have this, like, we had a whole lesson on loving each other. It was cool because they learned about each other. They learned about themselves. We learned about all of us. So it was a great family fun activity that has no pressure. It's just kind of fun to learn about the other people in the group. But you can do that through the 5 Love Languages website. If you were to Google search it, I promise it'll be a great thing. But I hope, yes, like Ash said, I hope our therapy is good therapy for you. Because anytime we can help you guys is helping the community as a whole be stronger and healthier and happier. But remember, guys, if you need anything, or there is a topic that you're wondering if we can talk about, that's the other part, is if there's a topic that you're like, hey, can we talk about this? Can we hash this one out? Let us know. Leave it in the comments, leave it in the sections, find us on social media, and leave it for us, because we have some ideas planned for the beginning of the year. Aside from our husbands, we have things like goal setting and vision boards and starting out on the right foot in the new year and that whole concept. But we have other topics, but we want to hear from you. What do you guys want to talk over? What are some things that you're like, how do I make military life and this combine? Let us know so that we can help make sure we can touch on those. But be on the lookout for next week's episode, and we will talk soon.